Don't mess this up or you'll get squashed by a 25-ton iron ball. Welcome to Guess the Number. The dealer throws a die into a cup, rolls it, and covers it up. Players have to guess what number it landed on. There are 6 cages around, each one for a different number from 1 to 6. Players who guess correctly will stand in the cage matching their number. When it's reveal time, if players guessed wrong, that massive iron ball comes crashing down on them. Guess right, and they win a whopping 100 billion yen and inherit the biggest fortune in Japan. With so much money at stake, who's going to come out on top? If they're just taking wild guesses, it's all down to luck. Before the real game begins, Secretary Mikiko rolls the dice 3 times to demonstrate. The screen shows that all 3 rolls landed on 1. When it's time for the actual guess, the lid goes on fast. Secretary Mikiko tells everyone to make their guesses. To amp up the tension, she places a lucky cat in one of the cages and crushes it with the iron ball. The cat's crushed in an instant. Everyone's freaking out, and some people are literally trembling with fear. This is the real deal. Secretary Mikiko reassures them that if they guess correctly, the ball won't drop. They've got 30 minutes to play. If they share answers, they're all out. Even though the iron ball is terrifying, the 100 billion and the fortune are too tempting to ignore. Secretary Mikiko then rings the gong. Let the game begin. To avoid being squashed into a pulp by the iron ball, the players are hesitating deeply in the face of the 100 billion yen prize. They're all wondering if they can outrun the falling ball. It seems like no one has a clue about the right number. At this point, a man named Zero starts to feel something strange about Secretary Mikiko's dice rolls, but can't pinpoint exactly what's off. Meanwhile, a confident guy in a floral shirt, Muscle Sakura, tells everyone, "I know the number. The first 3 rolls were all 1. It's too big of a coincidence for them to all be the same. So the die must be rigged, which means it's fixed on 1. He's sure the 4th roll will be 1 too." The players start to wonder if the solution is really that simple. Could 100 billion yen be that easy to win? Seeing the players still hesitant, Secretary Mikiko relaxes the rules. Now, as long as a player is in a cage when the game ends, they're considered a winner. This sounds like nonsense, after all. If the iron ball drops, who will survive? Muscle Sakura breaks down. Are you asking us to gamble our lives on the dice? At this moment, a brave player named Mitsuru steps into cage number 1. He looks like a student, and everyone feels embarrassed for not being as brave as a student. With Mitsuru leading the way, others quickly follow and rush into cage number 1. Zero and his 3 companions don't immediately follow the crowd. But Zero's buddy, Chunky Chikara, sees that the cage is getting crowded and rushes in as well. Secretary Mikiko then reminds everyone, if there are still people outside the cages when time is up, they will be automatically eliminated. The crowd starts to panic. Those who can squeeze out hurry to find a cage. This is a life or death game. Choosing the right cage is the only way to survive. Choosing wrong means becoming a pile of mush. Everyone tries to pull Chunky Chikara, the latecomer, out of the cage. But Chikara is agile and climbs up the cage's bars, refusing to come down. Zero quickly recalls that Secretary Mikiko mentioned players still in their cages when the game ends would be considered winners, even if they didn't guess the number correctly. Zero starts to think in reverse. Could it be that the game isn't really about guessing the number but about surviving under the iron ball? That seems impossible. Then Zero remembers the dice footage on the TV and finally spots the problem. Secretary Mikiko never said the dice rolls would appear on the TV, she only mentioned that the numbers facing up would be shown on the screen. Zero then recalls Secretary Mikiko's dice-throwing movements. During the 3rd roll, she moved her hand to the left, but the TV footage shows the movement going to the right. The footage is actually reversed. It turns out the TV footage was pre-recorded to make players believe all 3 dice results were 1, tricking everyone into choosing cage number 1. Once the iron ball drops, they could easily eliminate a large number of players. The organizer's scheme is extremely devious. At this moment, there are only 7 minutes left. In this life or death game, only the clever players can win. Zero's remaining 2 companions, Specs Hiroshi and Blonde Suneo, are puzzled by Zero's deductions and instinctively ask, "Isn't cage number 1 the right answer?" Zero replies, "No, it isn't. The footage was pre-recorded. The dice aren't rolling dice but regular ones. So each number has an equal chance of 1/6. In that case, no matter which cage players choose, the odds of winning are 50%. The real focus should be on avoiding the iron ball. When the players in cage number 1 hear Zero's firm denial, they all quickly back out, except for the student Mitsuru, who stubbornly remains in cage number 1. Zero, along with Specs Hiroshi and Blonde Suneo, heads to cage number 2. Although his companions are confused, they choose to trust Zero. It turns out Zero is a math teacher by profession but also works as a righteous thief, specializing in recovering money from people who have been scammed. Chunky Chikara, Specs Hiroshi, and Blonde Suneo are all Zero's trusted aides, and they all believe in his wisdom. They were invited to this high-stakes game by the wealthy sponsor. However, Chikara is so terrified that he starts doubting Zero's choices. Zero doesn't force Chikara to follow him but instead asks Mitsuru, "Why aren't you leaving cage number 1? Mitsuru coldly replies, "Because this is a game of hidden traps." Zero instantly realizes Mitsuru has also figured out the key to winning. Nearby, a long-haired man overhears Mitsuru's words and figures out the winning strategy as well. He then shares his insight with Gray Seiji. Gray Seiji was a former scammer and Zero's rival, so he sees this as a chance for revenge. In a death game, never trust anyone. Gray Seiji tells Chunky Chikara that cage number 3 is the correct answer, and advises him to stand in the middle and wait for victory. Seeing Gray Seiji and the long-haired man both enter cage number 3, Chunky doesn't think twice and follows them. Just then, Zero speaks up and stops Chunky. If cage number 3 is the right answer, why isn't anyone else going in? Chunky then realizes he's been deceived by Gray Seiji, but Gray Seiji threatens him, saying that sharing answers is against the rules and will lead to immediate elimination. Chunky is now caught in a tough spot. As the countdown begins, and many players are still outside the cages, suddenly, someone shouts that the dice are most likely to land on 5. With no time left for further reasoning, a rush of players floods into cage number 5. Muscle Sakura, running too slowly, gets pushed out and is forced to choose cage number 4 instead. This is the moment that decides the fate of 100 lives. The gates of the 6 cages slam shut. At that instant, Zero suddenly jumps into cage number 3, tackling Chunky and telling him to crouch with his arms wrapped around his knees. The gate of cage number 3 closes just as the game time ends. Secretary Mikiko lifts the cup and reveals the dice, showing that the number is actually 4. The footage on the TV was indeed pre-recorded. Muscle Sakura got lucky and ended up in the correct cage number 4, while the iron balls from the other cages come crashing down with a thunderous force, smashing into the ground. Zero and Chunky emerge unscathed. It turns out the winning strategy was to hide in the gap between the iron ball and the cage. In other words, the game tested players' keen observational skills. The players in cage number 5 all meet their end on the spot. But this game was just a warm-up. Only those who survive this round will qualify for the ultimate match with the 100 billion yen prize. The upcoming challenges will be even more brutal. That's a wrap. This is episode 1 of Zero, the Bravest Money Game. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing. Please stay tuned for the next episode of it. See you next time. Bye.